Welcome back to Classy and Sassy. I'm your host, Erica Regina. Let's talk about value. I'm not talking just in business, I'm talking about in life. What you accept, what you allow, and how people respond to some of those standards you set. Because whether you realize it or not, people are always taking notes on how they can treat you. So today we're going to touch on a few different things, but they all connect. Things like knowing your worth and recognizing those patterns and being intentional about the impact you leave behind. So, of course, grab your coffee, your tea, heck, your wine. It's late enough. And let's talk. Let's start with underpricing yourself and attracting the wrong clients. I know. If you read my blog, I just talked about this, earlier during the week. But it's something that is really bothering me right now and something I had to accept. So let's start business. A lot of us, unfortunately, underprice ourselves when we first get started. You want clients, you want momentum, and you don't want to scare anybody away. So you lower your rates, and that opens your door to everybody because you want clients. But that's exactly what walks in. Everybody. The clients who question everything, the ones who want 5-star service on a 1-star budget, the ones who somehow have time to nitpick but not time to respect your process. And suddenly you're tired and underpaid. Because now you're doing the most for the least. Here is the reality. Your pricing doesn't just determine your income. It also determines your experience. Lower pricing doesn't just bring in more clients. It often brings in more demanding clients. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, is this really worth it? Because if you don't value your time, people will take full advantage of that. Not sometimes, every time. Boundaries in business, it's just not optional. There are the difference between having peace and having burnout. And the clients you attract will always reflect what you're willing to tolerate. Think about that. Control is not love. And if you've been watching the news lately, or forbid, just looking at social media, you have seen how many things have been happening. That same idea of entitlement that people have in business also reflects in their personal lives quite often. We have seen way too many situations lately where, unfortunately, a man decides that if he can't have that woman, no one can have her. And let's be clear, that is not love. That's control. Somewhere along the way, possessiveness started getting marked as passion. Jealousy started, for some reason, getting framed as care. But it's not. It's entitlement. And in some of those worst cases, it turns dangerous. Because real love should not feel like pressure. It doesn't come with fear. And it definitely does not escalate when someone doesn't get their way. Rejection is a part of life. But how someone handles rejection tells you everything you need to know. If someone can't accept losing you, they never respected you. They were simply trying to own you. Okay? I know some of you, unfortunately, I know some of you very well, who feel like jealous, impulsive, passionate behavior is the only way to believe someone loves you. But someone hurting you is not loving you. Someone acting like you're their property and threatening your way of life is not love. Please, if you do nothing else, make a phone call. There's so many hotlines to get help. If you do not have family you can speak to, if you are in a situation that feels dangerous to you, feels unsafe to you. Now, let's switch gears a little because that's a little down. There's something interesting about how we view people, especially our public figures. Like, I read a lot of books that are self-help or business, or sometimes I just want to read a memoir because I want to see that person's rise or that person's struggles they dealt with and persevered. Right now, I'm reading Brandy Norwood's. If you know Brandy and her singing and all that, you know who I mean. And it shifts your perspective for some reason. Now, I admit, I was never obsessed with Brandy. I liked her music, okay, yeah, but I wasn't obsessed. But sometimes when you read these books, you get a whole new outlook on someone. Because from the outside, you see the image, their success, their headlines. But when you read their story, their real story, it adds layers. And you start to understand some of the decisions behind what you thought you already knew about them. Sometimes it makes you look at them very, very differently. Sometimes you can gain more respect for them, and you start questioning things a little more that you thought you knew. But either way, it reminds you that people are more complex than the version we've been given. That's why these books resonate. They fill in the gaps. Perspective doesn't excuse everything, but it definitely gives you context. Now, I know some of you are not, big on the whole reading thing, but if you are, things like these type of books, I feel the need to almost buddy read them lately. So since I already run 2 book clubs and I'm not about to start another one, I am going to start putting my thoughts as I'm reading books like this onto social media. My top takeaways, if you will, or things that just resonate deeply about a certain person that I may be reading, whether it's self-help or business or memoir, because I just feel the need. I already give, you my reviews on my fiction books, so why not talk more about where the nonfiction is taking me, what I'm learning, and what may be helpful to someone else, so that whether you're a reader or not, you may be getting some insight from something that someone may see that you didn't. Something that may help you at whatever point you're in right now. Now, let's talk about legacy. I've brought this up a few times. It's just one of those things where I keep thinking about it and trying to decide what to do. Because at some point, it stopped being about what you have, and everything starts being about who you are. When I was talking earlier about some of the domestic situations that happened, sometimes when you see these stories, you see people who are commenting quite frequently about one of the people in the story and the impact they made. How much people loved what they did for the community, for their families, for their friends? What kind of impact did they leave? And social media will not ever stop having some stories that you see that are just heart-wrenching. But it is always interesting when you see that someone has left this world, but they didn't leave it without making an impact people will never forget. It's the best way I can explain that. Because people may not remember everything you did, but they will remember the experience of you. So the real question is, what are you leaving behind? I don't mean in some big dramatic way, but in your everyday life. What choices do you make that impact people? What are your standards as far as others know? Are you consistent? That's your legacy. And speaking of value and how we see ourselves, there's more than one thing that comes up when you start stepping into new spaces. As my career has shifted, I have found myself being invited into rooms I probably wouldn't have even considered before, let's be honest. And I'm looking around like, okay, how did I get in here? And if I'm being honest, there's a moment where you question yourself. Do I belong here? Am I at the same level as everyone else? And I know that's not just me, because when your environment changes, your mindset doesn't always catch up right away. You can walk into a room you earned your way into and still feel out of place. It's called imposter syndrome. We've talked about it numerous times. And it doesn't always show up as insecurity. Sometimes it simply looks like overthinking, second guessing yourself, and feeling like you need to prove yourself, or shrinking yourself so you don't stand out too much. But here's the truth. Nobody in that room is questioning your presence the way you are. You were invited for a reason, because you bring something to the table, even if it looks different from what everyone else brings. And I've had to remind myself of that in the past. Just because I'm not the loudest voice doesn't mean I don't belong. Just because my path may have looked different doesn't mean it's less valuable. And just because I'm still growing, it doesn't mean I'm not ready. Growth does not wait until you feel at your utmost confident. It happens when you're figuring it out. So if you found yourself in some new spaces, some new rooms, or perhaps some new opportunities, and you're questioning whether you belong there, you're not there by accident. And you don't have to prove your room in every room you walk into. Sometimes your presence is enough to prove your worth. So whether we're talking about business, relationships, or how we see other people, or even how we see ourselves, it all comes back to value. What you expect, what you accept, and what you allow. Because your life isn't just about what you achieve. It's also about what you represent. And the truth is, people may not remember everything you did, but they will remember exactly how you made them feel. And that's something worth being intentional about. Thank you for being here, and I'll talk to you next week.